I've produced this video to give a breakdown of exactly how much money I've spent whilst living predominantly in the Philippines for the past 4 years. I've also spent some months in Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia and India, so include the money I also spent in those countries, although my thoughts comparing the costs of living in different Asian countries will be offered in more detail in a separate video.
Hello, good morning, good evening and welcome to Bigg World Cinema. Without further ado, we'll continue with what you're here for.
And for those of you who think I'm talking nonsense, this is a record of my outgoings, which I fill in on a daily basis when I spend money. These figures include all daily expenditure such as food, lodging, electricity, water, visas, internet, and include all flights plus local transportation costs. I do not include the money I've spent on new camera equipment, smartphone, hard drives, dental treatment, and a new suitcase. So please make sure you have enough spare money to use in an emergency if anything were to go wrong or you get sick. I do not have travel or medical insurance. I'm just winging it. Stick around till the end of the video where I reveal exactly how much money I've spent over the past 4 years. I left the UK for Thailand early December 2019 on a £450, $570 flight to Bangkok. I stayed for 3 months at a shared flat in the Ari area in northern Bangkok. At the time, I couldn't find any accommodation at a reasonable price on Airbnb, so took this shared flat as my only option with little time remaining. My flatmate was a bit weird. He was an underwater photographer and said he wasn't going to be around much at the time I was going to be living there. Wrong. At the beginning of 2020, when we first got wind of COVID, he started stockpiling food. Talk of a world lockdown hadn't even been mentioned, but he spent most days hiding himself in his bedroom or monopolising the kitchen. I just made my breakfast at home before he woke up, then ate out later in the day. My rent was £300, $380 per month. In total, over the 3 months I stayed in Bangkok, I spent £2,176, $2,755, which averages at £725 or $919 per calendar month. Having spent 3 months in Thailand, I flew to Cebu at the beginning of March 2020 at a cost of £100 or $127. My plan was to spend a few months in the Philippines and then fly on to Indonesia. Of course, that never happened. I booked into an Airbnb just outside IT Park and kept extending my stay, initially fortnightly, then monthly. The choice at the time was either be flown home or stay put. As I'd just left the UK 3 months earlier, I had no desire to return home, so I stayed. It was a lovely condo with a great pool where other expats would chew the fat over the COVID situation, wondering how long it was going to be before we were allowed our freedom. Naturally, at the time, we didn't envisage it was going to continue quite so long. I'd asked my landlords for a reduction in price, but they had us over a barrel really. Other condos had already closed their doors to new tenants and they were unwilling to arrange a longer lease. So I continued paying £335, $424 a month, which was far too much considering. I ended up staying there for a total of 14 months, spending a total of £9,185 $11,627, which works out at £656 or $830 per calendar month. By May 2021, because of the pandemic and the Philippine borders still closed to foreigners entering the country, a number of condos had lowered their prices, thankfully. I moved to a nicer condo in Mabolo, who were asking for £192 or $243 per calendar month, when the pre-COVID price had been £352 or $446 per month. So I quickly snapped up a 6-month contract and then kept extending it. I ended up staying in that condo in Mabolo for 18 months. I was eating at home all the time and my outgoings were ridiculously low. My spending over that 18-month period totals only £8,528 or $10,794, which works out at a measly £473 or $600 per calendar month. I have already produced other unbelievable budget videos breaking down my cost of living expenses whilst living in Mabolo, so check these out. This was a great time for me to save financially. Oh, it's so much cheaper signing a longer lease and then cooking yourself than staying in hotels and eating at restaurants a couple of times a day, which is what I was about to do. From November 2022 until the end of February 2023, I travelled around the Philippines for 4 months, visiting northern Cebu, Bohol, Camigan, Mindanao, Siargao, Negros and Panay Islands. My accommodation spending now doubled as I was spending around $16 each night on a hotel room. Eating out at caranderias and restaurants also worked out just a little more expensive than cooking for myself at home. Although at some places, hotels, restaurants, travel companies, I was able to take advantage of being a senior and was given a senior discount. During those 4 months on the road, I spent a total of £2,822, $3,572, which works out at £705, $893 per calendar month. This includes a £25 $32 flight from Boracay back to Cebu. Flights around the Philippines are pretty cheap overall.
We interrupt this budget broadcast, which is far too boring for most of you, and you'd like to see some ladies in bikinis from Boracay. So here we go. This is for you.
By March 2023, my 3-year stay in the Philippines had come to an end. As you're probably aware, you're allowed to remain for 3 years on a tourist visa in the Philippines before you need to leave the country overnight. If you've stayed more than 6 months, you need to obtain an exit clearance certificate, which was pretty straightforward when I left a year ago. I just turned up at the Cebu office with a set of passport photographs and they did the rest. But I've heard it's a bit of a ball ache at the moment. So many guys leave before their 6 month is up, so they don't need to go through this palaver. Why not? Go to another country nearby for a change of scenery. Which is what I did.
If you enjoy this channel's content, please could you like, share and subscribe. Thank you.
I took this opportunity to visit a couple of neighbouring countries. At the beginning of March 2023, I flew from Cebu to Saigon in Vietnam, costing £56, $71. I love Vietnam, have visited the country a few times this century, so have my favourite areas which I return to. Vietnam is a cheap country. Accommodation is quality, street food is great. A Vietnamese SIM card costs £5, $7. There's a great cafe culture with many coffee stands or shops lining the pavements. Throughout the month of March, spending time in Saigon, Phu Hoa, an island off the south coast, plus Nha Trang, Da Nang and Hoi An, I never saw one drop of rain. Yay! At the time, you could only stay for 30 days on a tourist visa, which costs £25 or $32. But more recently, that has been extended to 90 days, which was a shame, as I would probably have stayed longer if it had been available then. But Vietnam is on the backpacker tourist trail and is very, very touristy. Having spent my previous 3 years in the Philippines, I was unused to seeing hundreds of Western tourists gathered in one place. So a lot of the cheaper hotels I pinpointed were fully booked up. I was spending on average around $19 per night on a hotel room, which was more than I was paying in the Philippines, but the quality was much, much better. I took three internal Vietnam flights, which totaled £120 or $152. On top of the flights, food and drink totaled £156, $198, and accommodation was £446, $565, with a monthly spend of £704, $891, which works out at £23 or $29 per day. Bargain, hey? At the beginning of April 2023, I flew from Da Nang to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, which cost £60 or $76. A Malaysian SIM card costs £9 or $11.50. It was my birthday weekend, so I wanted to treat myself and stayed at the Hilton. I love Kuala Lumpur. It reminds me of Bangkok with its great infrastructure and transport system. But KL is a better, cleaner version of Bangkok, in my opinion. After staying in a decent hotel for a few nights, I moved into an Airbnb apartment on Embassy Row. Having to eat out all the time, I missed cooking for myself, so found this decentish apartment with a great balcony, with KL Centre in the near distance. Short-term apartment contracts aren't readily available in KL, and the rent here was expensive at £22 or $28 per night, considering I've been paying just £8 or $11 a night for my condo in Cebu. I ended up staying at the KL apartment for over 3 weeks and would have stayed longer, but they wouldn't drop their price any lower. So I moved to a hotel in the Brickfields area, otherwise known as Little India. Ah, India. For those who watch my channel, I love Indian food, so I felt at home here. A hotel in this area, which included free breakfast, was £16 or $20 a night. I stayed a total of 6 weeks in Malaysia. Accommodation totaled £949, $1,202 at an average nightly rate of £23, $29. My food bill for 42 days and nights came to £252 or $319. In total I spent £1,275, $1,615 at a daily spend of £30 or $38.
Here at BWC, Uncle doesn't charge a subscription fee like Auntie does, but buying us a coffee would be much appreciated. Thank you.
I flew back to the Philippines. My flight from KL to Manila cost £66 or $84. I spent 5.5 months staying in an Oyo hotel in Metro Manila, just outside BGC, and have already uploaded a video in detail of that experience, which you can see here. My total spending over that 5.5 month period was £3,174, $3,922, which works out at £22.28 a day. At the beginning of October, I hit the road again, travelling through Luzon, Mindoro and Palawan. I choose hotels to stay at through booking.com or Agoda. I spend a long time researching hotels. I'm adverse to staying anywhere with backpacker or hostel in their name, but will work my way up from the cheapest place on the listing until I find a place with decent reviews. Over 39 days and nights, I spent a total of £1,126, $1,427, which works out at £29 or $37 a day. Travelling through this part of the Philippines appeared more expensive than the areas I'd travelled around a year earlier. Before flying to India at the beginning of November, I bought a 5-year India visa costing £63 or $80, which allows me to stay in India for 180 days per calendar year, if I choose to do so. My flights to India cost £156, $198. And I took one internal flight to Goa costing £46, $58. I spent 8 weeks in India. For the majority of that time I stayed in homestays and ate out twice a day. A SIM card was £5, $7. On top of flights, my lodging for those 8 weeks cost £642, $814, and my food, drinks and travel costs totalled £562 or $712. My total spend in India over 56 days and nights was £1,204, which is $1,526, which works out at £21.50 a day or $27 a day. Finally, my trip to Thailand at the beginning of January 2024 completes my 50th month living in Asia. Internet in Thailand was £23 or $29 for the month, which was a lot worse a deal than I paid when I first lived in Thailand at the end of 2019. But I was on a different mobile plan. The flights from India to Bangkok cost £203, $258. On top of the flights, hotels cost £452, $573, with food and drink coming out at £184, $233. Total spend over 21 nights was £636, $806, which works out at £30 or $38 per day, which is the same daily spend that I'd incurred when I was in Malaysia a year earlier. So here it is, my total spend over 50 months living in Asia. As I said earlier, this doesn't include any spending on camera equipment, etc. Can we have a drum roll, please? The total figure is £32,104, $40,715, which works out at an average of £8,000 or $10,000 per year, or £642 or $814 per calendar month. So I hope this gives you some sort of idea about the cost of living in Asia. Bear in mind that everyone is different. I can already hear your pathetic shouts of "that's not living, that's surviving." As always with my budget videos, I'm showing what is possible living in Asia. You don't have to break the bank, just go easy on the balut. So it's 5 to 5. This is the golden hour when everything looks beautiful. Well, everything is beautiful here anyway, but it looks even more beautiful at this hour when the sun is low in the sky. So as a photographer, the best time to take photographs are just after sunrise and just before sunset, when the sun is not too high on the horizon and everything is golden, just like me, golden brown. Name that tune.
Just a quick reminder to please click the thumbs up button if you liked the video, or thumbs down button if you didn't. Obviously. Thank you. You've been watching Uncle, the man from Bigg World Cinema. Please like and subscribe and send cash!